Hi, welcome to Crisco's Corner. Proud to live in the greatest country in the world. Unfiltered opinions, no PC discussion here. Agree, disagree, hate it, love it, it's all good. Sit back and enjoy some unfiltered commentary. We discuss politics, culture, interviews, and more. Your comments are always welcome. Please help the channel by hitting that subscribe button. Doesn't cost a thing. And as always, thanks for your support. Hi, folks. 12 votes separated those House candidates. Then 55 ballots were found. After all the votes have been counted in a heated House rematch in central New York, only 12 votes separated Claudia Tenney, a former Republican Congresswoman, from Representative Anthony Brindisi, a Democrat. Now, I want to say up front, thanks to all my new subscribers. If you could push that subscribe button, I just put one up. It doesn't cost you anything at all. Help me get to 1,000 subscribers, and I can get some ad money and start really ramping up the channel. I want to say that I know Claudia Tenney. We talked several times on the phone. She came here to my store in Binghamton when I had a small chess tournament when I thought COVID was going to weigh down, and she was really decent and came, even with a small turnout. She was very charitable with her time, and she impressed very much the people that were here to see her. And I've mentioned on a radio broadcast, a discussion that I had in an earlier channel, that she was over 28,000 votes ahead until the mail votes came in. The system in New York, a lot of places, not just New York, so I won't just pick on them. It's broken. This mail-in stuff has been a problem here long before COVID. I ran in 5 city council elections. 3 of them as a Democrat, 2 as a Republican. And the problem is we have Binghamton University here, which is the vast majority of kids from downstate New York City. We're in upstate New York. And all of these kids get to vote up here. It's really ridiculous. It's wrong. Their residence is not the college, the dormitory, or the apartment they're staying at while they're going to school. And the Democrats allow it. This would have been long over. Claudia has lost votes in very rural, very Republican counties. Why? Because there's a college there. I believe Cortland was one of them. Should have wiped out Brindisi, but no. And these college kids, actually, when the votes came in, they had posted marks with Queens, New York City, and we're upstate. But they're allowed to vote here. In fact, I know someone that goes to Broome Community College, the community college here in Binghamton, and the professors told all the students, you take a picture of yourself mailing your absentee ballot, even though you're from New York, you get extra credit. It's out of control. Out of control. And this is just a microcosm of why it's out of control. This voting rules in New York is ridiculous. What they're trying to do is to take away representation from conservative areas of New York, period. And they do that through the students. Now with COVID, it's 10 times worse. Let's get on with the story here. But the razor's thin margin is far from the only reason this is engulfed in chaos. No, it's engulfed in chaos because of the mail-in fiasco. There was the case of the missing Post-it notes. Yeah, that was a beauty. I remember that. Which had mysteriously fallen off a stack of disputed ballots, making it unclear whether they had been counted and why they had been challenged. The challenge has been christened Stickygate by local media. Now comes a disclosure that 55 in-person ballots apparently misled and never counted, according to a lawyer for the Shingle County Board of Elections, were found by election workers in that county. 11 of the ballots were invalid, officials said, because the voters weren't registered. Of the remaining 44 ballots, more were cast by Republicans, which should help favor Ms. Tenney, who holds a 12-vote lead. 28,000 over that. 28,000. And now it's down to 12. There's something wrong here, folks, Well, where's your proof, John? Where's your proof? Where's your proof? Come on, it's staring you in the face. It's in plain sight. Downstate people that go to school upstate, even before COVID and this fiasco, should not be able to vote in local elections. You remember a year ago or so when they were pushing for prisoners in state and federal prisons to vote? Well, all of the prisons, the big ones, the vast majority of them are here in upstate New York and rural areas. What they wanted to do was have all the prisoners vote Democrat. That way they get to pick local representation. You're a convicted pedophile, rapist, or murderer, and they wanted you to vote so you could pick who the local mayor is, or county executive, or city councilman. That's how crazy these Democrats are. They don't care. Now, with this 28,400 to 12 votes, give me a break. The bombshell revelation was the latest in a twist in a race, second closest House contest in the nation. Jesus, one closer? Holy crow. That will ultimately be decided by the courts, can take weeks to resolve, even if it leads to a recount. This is insane. The fate of the race is of utmost importance for House Democrats, who are holding on to a slim majority after a disconcerting election cycle in which 12 Democratic incumbents have suffered defeat. Even with all the mail-in fiascos, not one Republican has lost in the Congress, an incumbent, not one. The other resolved race is an open seat in Iowa's 2nd District, where Mariannette Miller Meeks, a Republican, was recently certified the winner following a recount in which she led the Democrat Rita Hart by just 6 votes. Ms. Hart has indicated she intends to challenge the result, which could be the closest congressional race in recent memory. The election in the New York's 22nd Congressional District has underscored the perils of New York's opaque and decentralized approach to administering elections. Issues exasperating a razor-thin election. No, it's not, because it's decentralized. There should be standard rules. I like decentralization. It stops what happened with all the illegal mail-in ballots in the presidential election. Decentralization is the key to stop fraud and abuse. Indeed, the judge overseeing the election has increasingly expressed consternation with how elected officials in the district's 8 counties have mismanaged batches of disputed ballots. Last week, the judge rebuked the Oneida County Board of Elections when its officials admitted they could not determine whether 39 contested ballots were counted or why they were challenged, because the sticky notes that contained that information had been misplaced. Yeah, they put sticky notes by different colors for the reasons why they were challenged. While in the back of the envelope it says by law you're supposed to write the reasons. We have a serious problem on our hands, said Justice Scott Del Conte of New York State Supreme Court said in court following the revelation, according to Syracuse.com. The conundrum remains unsolved. The 22nd had been a hard-fought swing district for several years. Running from Lake Ontario to the Pennsylvania border, it encompasses both the city of Utica and Binghamton. That's where I live. In the state's economically depressed southern tier, these 2 cities provide ample Democrat votes, while the rural areas between and surround them are heavily Republican. God knows how many of these ballots that came in aren't lawful. I'm sorry, it's true. Citizen Action of New York. They're one of the number 1 culprits for this nonsense. Look up Citizen Action of New York, folks, in a Google search. Give you a good idea what they're like. My understanding is one of the founders of Acorn used to sit on the board of the state Citizen Action of New York, so that should speak volumes. After the past few weeks, Ms. Tenney, an avid supporter of President Trump, who received his backing for her candidacy, has seen her lead dwindle by more than 28,400 votes based on ballots cast in person to a mere 100 votes or so after tens of thousands of absentees ballots finished being counted last month. This is ridiculous. That margin shrunk even more as some county boards submitted their modified their tallies through the court proceedings, sometimes without proper notice, giving each candidate a narrow lead by 1 point or another. Both campaigns agree the outcome of the election now hinges on more than 1,500 absentee and affidavit ballots that the candidates have challenged, some of which have been counted already, though the exact figure remains difficult to pin down. Isn't that nice? Justice Del Conte, a Democrat elected in 2018, is expected to rule on their validity in the coming weeks. The margin in this race is incredibly close and continues to change, said Luke Jackson, a spokesman for Brindisi. As the process continues to play out, we are hopeful that once the counting process is completed, Anthony will be declared the winner. Yeah. Sean Kennedy, a spokesman for the Tenney campaign, blamed the series of mishaps on Governor Andrew Cuomo, who said she had not been given local election boards additional resources to cope with the deluge of mail-in ballots and changing rules. Yeah. As a result of Cuomo's bad policies, local election boards struggle to maintain the integrity of our election process. It's a mess. It's a mess. And Cuomo spokesman said they offered National Guard people to help. Give me a break. The next hearing is scheduled for Monday in Oswego County, and the case could drag out if the court orders local election boards to recanvass the ballots. Recanvassing means recount. The judge should also approve a full manual recount, which isn't triggered automatically in New York. A new law requiring recounts in races that are less than 0.5% or less goes into effect next year. Even so, the judge must contend with the many legal tribulations that have risen over the past few days and that threaten to cast doubt on the legitimacy of the result. Yeah, of course, because of New York state law. Because not only the fiasco from COVID, I lost 2 city council elections here in Binghamton because downtown Binghamton is filled with SUNY students. This is where they live when they go to school. But it's not their residence. It's not their permanent residence, but they get to vote here. So a bunch of kids from New York City, Queens, all the boroughs decide who the local council representative is. And after they get off from school, they go back to New York. That's wrong. Completely and utterly wrong. They should do checks, i.e. a driver's license. Your driver's license has a Queens address, you can't vote here, period. You have to vote in Queens. It's ridiculous. Under state law, election officials are supposed to mark the reasons for the validity of a ballot was disputed directly on its back in ink. Of course. But officials in Oneida County use the sticky notes, many of which got mixed up and no markings at all were used for more than 130 absentee ballots being contested in Madison County. Good Lord. Because objections were not properly documented, the Tenney campaign argued in court filings on Wednesday the judge has no jurisdiction to rule the validity of those ballots and should certify the results as they stand. And not because I'm a Tenney supporter, she's right. The county's shifting tallies have also raised concern about the reliability of their record keeping, frustrating Justice Del Conte, who ordered election officials to preserve and not to alter tally records and worksheets moving forward. We'll assume they're going to do that. I know here in Broome County, where Binghamton is, I know a lot of the people that work in the election board. And I know they have a top Republican, top Democrat that run things. And they do very well here. I have to give them that. They do very well with the registrations and the vote tallies, and they do pretty well. So I'm pretty impressed. So kudos to them. The proceedings were waylaid again on Tuesday when the lawyer for the Shenango County Board of Elections sent a letter to the judge with a few details about the discovery of, wait for it, 55 previously unreported affidavit ballots cast in person during early voting. Affidavit ballot means you walk in to vote. Your name is not in the system, which means you're not registered. But they have to give them I used to call it an emergency ballot when I was election inspector. Now they call it an affidavit ballot, same thing. They shouldn't be there to vote. They're not registered, but they have to give them one anyway. And all of a sudden they found 55. Isn't that amazing? How all of a sudden, just like in Wisconsin, just like in other states, swing states that Biden needed, they found these votes out of thin air, just enough for them to win. It's absurd, and it's done in plain sight, and it's wrong, and it should be stopped. Justice Del Conte had not said how he would deal with the 44 ballots of those 55, which election officials have not opened or counted. The race in the 22nd district is just the latest New York race to stretch in extra innings as a result of both the state's languorous approach to vote counting and the surge of absentee ballots that swamped the system set up to rely on to rely on in-person voting. The state, which has long lagged behind other states in election reforms before passing a raft of new laws in 2019, greatly expanded the ease and access to absentee voting earlier this year as a response to the coronavirus. Again, the cover, coronavirus. Oh, how did I put that? Which has killed tens of thousands of New York residents. Yeah, of course people died. What does that have to do with voting? You could go right online. You don't even know who the hell you are. Fill out information, get an absentee ballot. It's ridiculous. There's so many holes in the system, and they know that. And they can say, well, prove it, John. Where's your fraud? Prove it. Where's your proof? There's so many holes in the system. Yeah, there has to be fraud. The first test of that expansion came during a primary in June that was not encouraging. Yeah, no kidding. When hundreds of thousands of voters cast ballots by mail, and some races weren't called until early August. That delay was explained by both the sheer volume of ballots as well as a state law that set strict procedures for handling absentees. Yes, strict procedures how to handle them once they're in. And of course, they're mostly Democrat votes, but very, very lax and no strict procedures to register. No signature verifications. Does this sound familiar, folks? Which usually make up a fraction of the total vote, including delaying an actual counting until well past Election Day. I remember when I ran as a Democrat 3 times and a Republican twice for city council seats. By the way, those of you wondering, I won the first time when I first started. I lost very badly to a Republican. I was a Democrat back then. The next time I beat the same Republican by 17 votes. And those of you that are wondering, I got reelected by 65 to 35% margin. And then after I was term limited out, I left the Democrat Party in 2013 because they completely lost their minds. And I ran twice against people from New York. Just the ultra-progressive leftists that just get all the students to vote. And all the transplants from New York City that come up here. It's a sin. It's a sin. It's a shame, and it's wrong. In 2018, Mr. Brindisi was serving in the state assembly, defeated Ms. Tenney by a little more than 4,000 votes. I remember that one. Still a lot of SUNY students from New York put him over the top, but it was way fairer than the mail-in campaign this time. The final result in that race was also delayed as absentee ballots were counted. Ms. Tenney, herself a former assemblywoman, had first been elected in 2016, succeeding Richard Hanna, a 3-term centralist Republican who had retired and rejected Donald Trump as the party's standard bearer. This is a small microcosm of what's wrong with the system. It was broken in New York just for the reason you have to have stricter standards when you register. Now, I know on the Board of Elections registration, I'm sure they're out throughout New York State because we're not unique here. When you fill it out, they ask for your last 4 numbers, your social, things like that. That's all information that people have. What you do is you just get a list of somebody that hasn't voted in 4 or 5 years. And then you ask for their absentee. And you get it. You fill it out and mail it in. No one knows who got all these unsolicited hundreds of thousands just in New York State. No one knows because they were sent out without being asked for. 28,000 plus votes, now down to 12. And you can say, John, where's your evidence? Seriously? Seriously? By the way, now you saw a previous, much earlier video when I first started doing my podcast, when the side of my building was spray painted because I had a big Trump 2020 sign on the side of it and also a picture of President Trump and Claudia Tenney where he was endorsing her, and then another sign for Claudia Tenney, and I got spray painted. So this is how the left operates. This is how they operate. I'm about a half a block away from Citizen Action of New York's office here in Broome County. Oh, lucky me. So they've been boycotting and ruining my business for years. And last year when I ran for city council was the last nail when they started accusing me of being endorsed by the local police department, which, of course, now they want to defund and hate. that we're rounding up black people and putting them in Broome County Jail to let them die. This is before COVID, by the way. It's despicable. These people are despicable. They cheat like hell. Sorry, they do. In 2007, and when a very close friend of mine was a city council president, a Democrat, but he wasn't a nutbar Democrat, and he was primaried by Citizen Action of New York's candidate. All of a sudden, all of these new registered appeared out of nowhere a couple of months before the election. After the election, and by the way, he passed away shortly thereafter of cancer, rest his soul. And he was a good man, too. He was a good guy. His name was Pat Russo, and he got screwed over. I took a list of the new registered within 60 days of the date that's required to register for new people. I took that list and I went around door to door. No, I didn't knock on the door and ask for the people. What I did was I looked on the mailbox for the name. And when I started that list, I went through the first 20. And 12 of them had no name on the mailbox. And I stopped. That gave me the information I needed already. And that's the way it is, folks. And this system has been busted for a very long time. Greatly exasperated by the ridiculousness of unsolicited ballots in New York and COVID. COVID. All the poll watchers are pushed out because of COVID. This was because of COVID. This was because of COVID. That's a lie and it's nonsense. And these Democrats should be ashamed. And because of this chicanery, because of this nonsense, I personally, I can't speak for anybody else, I will never, ever, ever, ever vote for a Democrat, whether it be dog catcher, all the way through the President of the United States. This party has to pay a price for this cheating. And it's nonsense. And these fiasco wouldn't happen if they fixed the rules and residency requirements in New York State. Well, folks, that's my take. We'll see how it works out. Stay tuned. Until next time, goodbye and good luck.